Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show, we'll have a talk about Linux projects such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment, or an application, or something else, like today. We also chat about the news or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the openSUSE project. And with me today, I have a fantastic ensemble of guests or panelists or whatever. Mark, Ulfnick, Jinda, Colin, Schickel, Mr. Allen, and the wonderful Zebedee boss. How is everybody?
Good.
Doing good, thank you.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Real quick, sound issues and stream issues last week. Super sorry about it. It's like 2 weeks in a row, or 2 weeks ago rather. But 2 weeks in a row, I apologize. Hopefully this week is great. I did a couple of test runs ahead of time to make sure that things would hopefully sail well, and we'll find out, I guess. So be sure to do the straw poll. Straw polls are always a lot of fun, and the link to that straw poll will be in the Zoom chat. And for those that haven't done it yet, shame on you. Actually, not really. No shame. No shame here. No shame. No shame in my game. Please do it. I would love it if you did it. On the docket for today, we're going to talk about what have you been doing in Linux and tech. First, do the straw poll, talk about some AI tools, what's coming up next week, and do our last call. So first, what have you been doing in Linux and tech? Well, actually, I first want to kick one thing off before I get to you, Jinda. Do you know that this week we are celebrating the 50 years of Ethernet or Ethernet, depending on where you are in the world? Did we know that?
It's amazing stuff.
No, didn't know that.
50 years. That's pretty darn cool, I think, that it's been around that long. I had no idea. So there is a link to a computer file who did an episode on this. This is something Eris contributed. So check that out. I only saw part of it. I thought it was interesting. And also from Vampire Tap. Wait, there's stuff about Vampire Tap. I have no idea what this is about. But just in case, hey, here is... So something you've been doing cool in Linux. Jinda, you brought up something I thought was very interesting. MX Linux.
Yeah, MX Linux has now just started their beta 1. I've been running alpha. I've actually been running alpha 1 for a little while, a few weeks now, or alpha 2, I think it was, for a few weeks now.
Okay.
I have no issues really whatsoever with it. They did a fantastic job. Like everybody knows, MX Linux actually works pretty well. It boots up way quicker than it did before. It's the first Debian operating system that I ever had that actually shuts my computer off in a reasonable hour.
Oh. Well,
I don't know why, but every computer I ever had, I think it's because I usually have Jesus motherboards. Debian likes not to shut the computers down. It's like it takes longer to shut the computer down as it does to boot. It's okay. All right, but this one does work. They installed PipeWire in it this time with it, and they also have Wire Plumber in it, which to make it even more confusing, they put another thing in the sound system. But Wire Plumber has some of the settings that you can change in it to make your sound settings work easier, I guess. I did have to change one setting in it because every time the sound would stop shut off, there'd be a loud pop when it come back on. So I turned the delay off, and that's the only thing that I ever had to do to it so far. Everything's been running crystal clear as all the MX Linux operating systems that I ran in the past. I'll put a link for where to get MX Linux, guys, if you want to try it out. I'm sure somebody in the chat is.
So that's quite interesting because you mentioned that they brought in this new PipeWire and all the rest of it. So why have I still got Pulse Audio running if they've replaced it? I'll have to mention that to Dolphin Oracle because I read that as well, and you've only just reminded me. And I know I've got Pulse Audio running because I did it to boost my microphone. So that is quite unusual.
Well, there is there's a command you can use to check to see which one is actually running, because to some bits of software, it's still going to look like Pulse Audio.
Yep.
And for most things, like I'm using EasyFX, which I guess runs on Pipewire now, but there are other things like Audacity, it doesn't see Pipewire, it sees Pulse Audio. So you could actually be running Pipewire and not know it, which actually is a great thing to experience, because if you don't know that they made a change, but yet they made the change and it's better, then that's all the better.
Yeah, Pipewire is pretty incredible in that it also has a lot of ability to communicate with other audio systems. So there are little cross communication plugins for Pipewire to work with Pulse Audio, to work with Jack, to work with ALSA. So all of these sort of systems can sort of coexist with each other while Pipewire does the work that it needs to do. So sometimes, you can run some Pulse Audio commands and they'll just work. Other times they won't, but there is an equivalent command in Pipewire to make that change. So it's an interesting time in the audio space right now.
That is really, really clever, because I've just typed Pavu control in a terminal and up it pops. I wouldn't have known it wasn't Pulse Audio. That's incredibly clever.
Yeah, this might be like the first subsystem replacement in Linux that has gone smashingly well.
Yeah.
Like X11
Yeah.
to
Agree with
Wayland,
that.
well, not smashingly. But and then
But who are we going to be blaming now for Pulse Audio if it's being overwritten?
I think we could still blame Simon.
Well, I really enjoyed the fact that they installed the wire plumber also with it. That actually I think made it a lot better for the control. I think that was a good move on MX Linux's standpoint.
well, fantastic.
Yeah, it boots a lot quicker than the other one. I think it may be running systemd though, if that's an issue for some people. It never bothered me if it runs it or not, but
It's not. It's still running is it sysv or whatever
oh,
they
it's
call
still
it?
running systemd.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still
It's
running
the unit.
sysv by default, but you can change to a systemd boot up within the grub menu. You just go
Okay.
down to advanced and choose systemd. But then also they've got a very nice MX tool, which means you can then set systemd
Right.
permanently if you want to. And I don't know if it just came about, but they've also got an excellent EFI boot manager built into their little grub utility now, which is also a great way if you're a distro hopper of cleaning up your EFI boot system, because I've only been back for, I don't know, 3 months mucking about, and I had 15 in there, so I thought it was time to clean it up.
That's quite a few.
Yeah, more than a handful. So besides the Pipewire, would you say there's anything else in MX that really stands out as being like, wow, this is great. I really like what they've done. Now, I will say the thing I like about MX is it's very predictable. So they probably aren't going to make a whole lot of earth-shattering changes, but is there anything else that you'd like to highlight?
They did take out Clementine and put Strawberry in it, which was a good move. I think that Clementine, unfortunately, hasn't been updated in a billion years. Well, I don't think Strawberry has either. But I didn't really notice anything. Everything they did change, like you said, was like subtle and well done. You know what I mean? If you want to go run this now, there's no reason to wait for it to come out, I don't think. I didn't see any issues with it whatsoever, and I don't think there's anything in here to go, oh my God, they changed the world. Except for they are running Pipewire, which seems to work flawlessly. My sound's actually working for once.
Yeah, Pipewire also has a number of benefits for Bluetooth audio in particular. So if you're one of those folks that uses like Bluetooth headsets or AirPods or whatever, Pipewire handles that much more reliably. So, yay!
Yeah, that is great. So has anyone had any issues with Pipewire since the transition? Like, is there anything that's happened that, I'm just curious now, this is just total curiosity for those that have tried Pipewire.
It's working everything that I want to do with it here. I've noticed I didn't even notice that it had gone, that Pulse Audio had gone, because to me, it's just still working, which is perfect. Make all the clever changes you want in the background, And as long as you don't interrupt people's use of the system, that's proof of a good implementation in my mind.
Yeah, agree.
Totally agree. Well, yeah, MX Linux has been one of my favorites for quite some time. I think that they do good work there. Dolphin, Oracle does. You can tell there's a lot of care taken into it to make sure that things just go well.
Well, their user group forum is absolutely fantastic, and I think that really, really helps. I think that made it the operating system like way better because their user group forum is so good. But I could be wrong.
And Dolphin is such a great guy.
Well, that's
Always a
that,
pleasure to
I
talk
don't think
to.
we even had to point that out.
He's sometimes in chat. Haven't seen him for a while. That's probably because he's been busy with MX, I suppose.
Yeah, probably. He surfaces from time to time. I'll get some comments from him on Twitter or something, and that's about it. So if you haven't done the straw poll yet, please do. There is still time to knock out that straw poll. Now, we are short in Eris today, and he does do such a great job with these straw polls. But this is an easy one, and it's a fun one. Double click or single click? Which setting is best? Double clicking to
There
view
is
files
a right answer.
or folders, or the single click?
If you say double click too often, Michael will appear. You know that, don't you?
It's true. Maybe if you say single click too often, he'll appear. He'll get all upset. So I was noticing on my vehicle's key fob that like on some parts here there are like 2x. Like if you want to start the vehicle, like remote start it, or open the back gate, or open the side sliding doors. I can't talk. You need to. It says 2x on there, or x2. So you have to hit it twice. And then I just had the epiphany today. Like, oh, you have to double click to open the door. That makes sense. If you're going to open it, you need to double click. So if that's
It's
a
confirmation.
hint, that's
Yeah,
right.
I have a theory that operating system maintainers who make it single click don't own cat. That's my big deal.
They don't own a cat.
They don't own cats because
Oh.
the double click is the confirmation click. It's like, are you sure you want to run this? Whereas if you have a cat, they jump on your keyboard or your peripherals and they run everything if you're single click.
You know, that makes sense. That does.
Yeah, that does.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cats or house chickens? Probably either of those two.
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah. If you ever have a chicken run across a keyboard, you'll know.
You leave Shickle out of this.
I think he personally stopped running over to keyboards. It's getting expensive.
Yeah, they get real pricey.
So if you've done
man.
that straw poll, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. So double click or single click? That is the question. To be or not to be? So the results are, let me refresh it one more time. 61.76% said double click the fun.
As
So-
it should be.
Yes. So we know how Mark voted too. With 26.47%, save the mice single click. So so a quarter of those users out there, they are really concerned about saving their mice. 5.9% said other, and another 5.9% said Tux Penguin. I like the Tux Penguin vote. I actually occasionally use that one.
Tux Penguin.
I
put other.
Yeah. Not sure exactly why I do it, but I do it. Sometimes I think it's just fun.
So my guess is those single click people are also the ones that only have a single button mouse. The Apple users.
That could
Oh
be.
man.
I put other because I use whatever the desktop comes with and I just adapt to it. So currently I've been trying Plasma out for quite a while, and it's quite refreshing just to be able to single click. But yeah, it does have its advantages and its disadvantages as well. But sometimes it's good to go click, click, click through folders.
Mhm.
It's actually quite fast. But yeah, sometimes it can get in your way. But it's interesting. I just use whatever the desktop comes with. But I found the change in Plasma last night. I was looking for how do you change this? And it was a weird, I don't know, Plasma has some weird ways of doing things in their settings sometimes with the naming conventions. And I can't remember what it said. It definitely wasn't double click or something like that. It was just a weird way of naming it.
So on their quick settings, with the settings starts up with this page, they have clicking files or folders. You have opens them or selects them. And it says like select by clicking on items selection marker. And then that's with opens them. And then for selects them, opens by double clicking instead. So it actually states that, it actually describes it, which it does. I think if you don't know the terms single click, double click, it makes more sense. But if you know the terms single click, double click, it's probably a little bit more confusing. Now, I will say,
I don't think we need a paragraph. We don't need a paragraph to tell us that it's a single click or double. Just put single click, double click.
It's technically only a phrase because there's no punctuation at the end, so it doesn't actually fall under a complete sentence criteria. It does fall short.
I know. I'm being dramatic.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I
I'm
don't
actually
pick
a
up
fan of the idea of randomly generating between like 1 and 5 clicks to open something. So every time I go to open a file, I don't know how many clicks it's going to take, just 1 to 5. And so like I go to open it with 1, nope. Gotta hit 2, nope. 3, nope.
So it's kind of like living dangerously, where you just don't know what's going to happen.
What it actually teaches you to do is just slam on the key on the mouse a whole bunch. So it's like the complete opposite of save the mice, right?
I think there's some value to that. I'm not sure what, but I think there might be.
I'm Russian roulette version of mice.
I'm a single click guy, and I don't have a single button mouse, but I wish I did because that would be so cool. But the main reason I do it is because everything I click on normally, as somebody who spends the majority of my time in a web browser and in Discord and in Telegram, when I click on something, it opens. Like when I click on a group in Telegram, it doesn't just highlight the group, it enters the group. Same thing with Discord. When I click on a server, it opens the server. If I click on a link, it opens the link. So if every single other paradigm of computing, the same thing on my phone, I click on an icon, it just opens. Every single paradigm of computing, except for files and folders on my desktop, is single click, then it's my desktop. That doesn't make sense. So that's why I switch it around. Because if I click on something, I just expect it to respond to that. I am more likely to click on something with the intention of opening it than the intention of selecting it. Most of the time, if I'm selecting files, it's for a specific thing. I can just drag and drop anyway. So that's why I use single click, just because it's more uniform with all of my other stuff. And I'm weird like that.
Now, I'm really glad you brought that up, Chickle, because that made you the contrarian from the group, and I was actually going to play that part of contrarian, but now I don't have to. So thank you.
I've taken the bullet.
So I voted single click, but just because I think it's neat. But now there's some rationale to it, so I don't feel so bad.
Now I will say I think
Rocco taught you well.
I will say I think that single click, especially in Plasma, does make more sense. Because they have, when you highlight over it, if you actually want to just select it, there's a select ghost thing that appears to just select. And then you can add multiple by hitting that button. So for all intents and purposes, and I voted double click, but when you weigh it all together, I really do think single click does make more sense based on what Schickle said with every other user interface everywhere except for the file manager is single click to be able to for all actions. So that said, I'll keep
there's something really cool that Elementary OS does, and I don't know if they still do it. It's been a while, but it's like a hybrid between the two. where when you're clicking into folders, it's just one click, you enter the folder, one click, you enter the folder. But when you get to like the end of a chain, you have to double click. So if you're just spamming through folders or whatever, you won't end up accidentally opening a file. Because when you get to the point where that's not a folder, that's a file, that's a thing you have to open, then it switches to double click, which I think is really
Oh.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is clever. Yeah, I have to say.
I
That
think
is
that's
real
really
clever.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, even the menu is like the application menu is single click as well.
Yeah.
So it literally is
Even
only
if
the file manager.
it's folders. Yeah, it's just the file manager, which is interesting because it is one of like the most like core components of our computers. Like a file manager is so like fundamentally important, and yet it is like so dramatically different from every other piece of the computer. I don't really understand how this happened and like why it's sort of like diverted its sort of like UI like choices, but it did on pretty much every platform. I mean, Mac OS also does this. Um, Windows does this. GNOME does this. So I'm like, I pretty. It's a pretty consistent inconsistency. I don't understand how or why, but
Okay, let me try and explain it from a non-technical point of view, because you got to remember, and I say this every week, that we are the geeks of the Linux world, yeah. But if you've got a normal user who opens up a file manager, clicks into Windows System 32, you don't want him clicking on a system file and then the system trying to open it without him having specifically double clicked it if they know what they're doing. So when somebody's just browsing around, going into a system type folder and hitting a command or a DLL or something. I mean, it's a long time since I've done that and just done it willy-nilly to see what happens. But, you know, if you click the wrong thing, who knows what you're going to do to your system. But if you have to double click it, then it's like it takes away perhaps some of the mistakes.
yeah, I mean, that is definitely, I mean, whether that's intentional or unintentional, I mean, I feel like, yeah, that is definitely a consequence of it. You do have to, you do have to actually try to click it, to open it that way. So yeah, I mean, and I guess there are more dangerous things on your local file system in regards to your system than there are on like a web browser. Like, you're more likely to open something you shouldn't open if you're messing around with your file system than like if you click a dumb link, then you just generally just go to a dumb website. But
Right.
yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
So Sean Gold says another multiple click paradigm is in word processors, text editors. One click just
That is true.
changes the insertion point. Double click will usually select the current word. Triple click will be the paragraph. And that is interesting.
This is true. That is very true. And that also applies on iOS and maybe Android. I haven't tried it, but different click types will select different amounts of a word. If you double click on a word, I think it selects like a whole chunk or something. So yeah, that's a very good point.
And then Sean goes on to say, in file managers, you can select something with a single click and then perform additional operations on it, like rename, delete, etc. But I would argue that although I agree because that's how I typically do it, but you could argue that the right click brings up the menu to do all those functions. So that's a single click to get you to those other operations as well.
Yeah. And I think
Good
there's
luck
even
right
a
mouse
button on the
clicking on a single
keyboard.
button mouse.
Yeah, no,
it's
yeah, exactly like that.
Control, I think, on a single button mouse, control.
Is it control?
Click. I think it's control.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like a
So you
modify.
just-
Oh, there's also,
So
if you have a file selected, there's a specific button on your keyboard that will just open that menu. It's like a context menu button. I don't know if it looks like a little piece of paper with lines on it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's
Not all
normally on the
keyboards
right-hand
have that.
side of a keyboard, yeah.
Okay.
So my current my desktop doesn't have that with this keyboard layout, but my current laptop does, but my previous laptop did not, but the laptop before that did. So it's kind of a hit and miss. But I think that is a key that should be required, I think.
It's pretty handy. I remember the first time I saw it and I was like, what does this button do? And I kept hitting it and like little menus kept popping up. And I was like, this is the dumbest button I've ever seen. And now I'm like, well, I mean, if you don't have a mouse or if you're in like a heavy keyboard centric workflow, like that is just, I mean, it makes sense. Like it's
Mhm.
just a context option. Like,
Yep.
why not have it?
Because some people cheap out on you.
This is true.
I mean, I would say that'd be more important of a key than the insert key. How often do you use the insert key?
Is that still a thing?
It
Oh.
toggles, essentially will toggle the insert or overwrite function. But how often do you go to the overwrite function?
I use it as a hotkey for my OBS.
I probably should change it so it doesn't do insert, because
Oh,
9 times out of 9, I will accidentally hit it and then start overwriting things when I really want to insert.
wow. I'm
I
learning
used to
so
tear
much.
them out of my keyboard. I used to just to rip the button right out.
Do you have anger issues with your keyboard?
Yeah, evidently, I do have keyboards with that button torn out, and the numlock button. I tore that out too.
I forgot about numlock.
I sometimes need the numlock because I want to use the keyboard as arrows.
I use numlock. Yeah.
Some other replies that I didn't get to yet. Here are a few. It says one was that Eris could have added both are good to the as an option. Another one was I kind of use the defaults. So this might be you, Colin.
Mm.
So on say KDE and Elementary OS, I use single click. On GNOME XFCE, I use double click. Someone else says single click is annoying to me because I am so used to double clicking. I end up with multiple windows or applications opening. Then another, I voted for the double click, but I actually click on it till it does what I want it to do.
That's
Okay.
Eventually it'll open.
Right. Must have been like running Windows 3.1 on a 286. So another one is, I have always been single click. Destroy all the mice. Another, I bet the poll would track with non-KDE users to KDE users. That's interesting. I use KDE and double click. Someone else says single click, less clicks. As a KDE user, double clicking for sure. I don't care if it's less efficient, but I used Windows for too long before, and Kubuntu changed to double click anyway. So easy to accidentally click on a folder and then suddenly be transported into another world. So the inspiration for this poll is in the Plasma 6 changes. Nico states that though Plasma devs agree that single click is superior, they can see that double click should be the default due to how it is the default on so many other desktops and platforms. Plasma 6 will switch to double click. So if there's going to see an article on that, I can put that in the chat.
It'll be interesting to see what MX Linux does then, because Thunar is single click in MX. And you have to specifically go into their tool and change it to double click.
I really appreciate the approach of this is better, but since you asked for it, all right.
Well, I think Kubuntu, the fact that Kubuntu's been doing it for a while now, probably is a good litmus test of what users prefer.
Yeah, I think double click is honestly the sane choice. As a default, I really think it makes perfect sense. As much as I don't like it, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, it does. All right. Anything else on single click or double click? I know, Mark, you were very passionate about right choice earlier, so I don't know if you had anything to follow up on that.
No, I'm just set in my ways is all.
I was part of my new job that I have is I do a lot with managing virtual machines and VMware, and I'm grateful that a single click doesn't do anything other than select. Just saying.
Yeah.
So I think there are cases for certain actions, and maybe that's the rationale or justification for the file manager, because those are more serious. Like I think Shikl, you said that there's a lot more seriousness to if you execute something or run something, open something from a file manager. The actions are more tightly packed together, as it were. I don't know.
But isn't
Yeah, I
it
think
great? But isn't
Oh, I
it
was gonna
great
say-
to choose between a single click or a double click?
True. We are definitely spoiled.
I like the fact that it's a little thing to nitpick on. You know, it's like arguing over flavors of ice cream. It's all ice cream. Don't complain. But
Yeah.
nitpicking over different flavors, to me, that's funny.
So can you imagine the consequences with all the changes being made, that it now changes that it's not the turn of a key and the press of a big red button, but it's a digital screen and it's prepare to fire, and the operator on the right clicks it and thinks it's going to select it, and it's gone, oh, sorry, boss, too late. It's just fired.
Yeah, because I imagine at some point in time, or early on in the computer land, you know, resources were so much more limited. So if you were to inadvertently launch an application, I mean, this is a process. This is going to take a while for it to actually do what it's got to do. So I can see why. Actually, isn't it Mac that really introduced the double click?
It
Or is it
probably
Xerox?
is, honestly. They're probably working against me.
Yeah, because
I
they only
swear.
had one button.
Yeah, they only have one button.
So Anna Rita
Probably,
says,
but
single click. This is the way. Oh, and also, I have spoken. Yeah, that's so funny.
Oh man.
I interrupted you, Zeb, I think.
No, that's okay. I did that bit about the missile firing thing with the new technology.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I think, at the end of the day, it makes total sense to be the same as most other paradigms, isn't it? And then if, the single clickers want a single click, they just change it. And they're probably the nerds who will change it anyway, because they're the computer enthusiasts. The rest are just normal desktop users. It makes sense, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
But isn't
Yeah.
just about everybody using Linux an uber nerd, really? I mean, are there many non-uber nerds that use Linux? Is there anybody that's not an uber nerd that uses Linux?
Yeah,
I
I've
feel
spoken
like-
to some family members on Linux. They're not nerds, nowhere near it. I mean, my sister-in-law, she had Windows 10. I tried putting Windows 11 on a computer. It's too old. And then and so, when I looked at Linux Mint, when that runs out of date and Windows 10, it's like Linux Mint was going to last longer. So I just thought all she does is opens a web page and logs into things. That's all she does. So why have Windows 10 running on an old computer that was just about at the end of its life when I jumped on there? The poor computer was just hardly running at all. So, put Linux Mint on there, make some web apps, and she can just log into her online internet or email and things like that, banking and whatever. That's all she does. She's not a nerd, but
Yeah,
that's
I think you're right,
extent
Colin.
of
Once
it.
the average user's been shown that funny looking button in the corner is your start menu, they're away. And
That's
they can
it.
now do their
That's-
stuff.
It's as simple as that. Is that it's not rocket science in any, when you think about it, you chase all these different desktop environments and you get budgie coming out and this and that, and it's all different, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's a menu at the bottom left-hand corner. It opens a menu. You click it, opens a menu, then you select what you want, or you add it to the taskbar or whatever you want, the panel or whatever you want to call it. It's not difficult, is it? At the end of the day, to be honest.
I just thought of something. You might have already discussed this while I was away, but Shikl mentioned, like everything is accessed kind of like a link, right? And I remember now, like KDE 3 was it, and possibly 2, like Conqueror was the file manager, which was also the web browser.
Yes.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense that single click would be a thing from that. and they probably held single click over from that legacy behavior.
Yeah,
That's such
I'd
a
have to
good
think so.
point.
I think you're right, Adam.
Yeah,
be
I
honest.
think you are right.
Huh.
Although the Mandrake,
Had to dig deep there. Sorry.
yeah, that wasn't too deep. I mean, that was actually well done. I used Mandrake in the KDE 3 days. I'd never used KDE 2. And it was, Mandrake had it set up for double click. So I didn't realize that the Plasma / KDE default was single click until I moved to SUSE or openSUSE at the time. Because they did the defaults.
That's wild. Yeah.
It is. I left the single click by default for my kids just to see what happens. It's an experiment. We'll just see what happens.
On the subject of nerds using Linux, I think you can be given any kind of computer and with some intuition just use it. Like I switched my mom to iOS from Android and she picked it up just fine, even though it was different. I think the border that you cross is when you wake up in the morning and you go, I'm gonna write an operating system to this CD today and install it on my computer. I think at that point you qualify as a nerd.
So-
It's easy to get a hold of Linux though.
So reading the chat, I want to apologize to all the non-Uber nerds if I've offended you, because apparently there are a lot of people who are not Uber nerds that use Linux. So I was very wrong. I apologize. So there's a little egg on my face.
I embrace it. I embrace the Uber nerdiness.
I guess my kids aren't really Uber nerds, at least not computer Uber nerds, and they use Linux all the time too. So I guess I was just blinded by myself and you people. All right. Well, I think we beat that subject to death. Does anybody else have anything they want to contribute on that before we move on to Ulfnick and his AI tools?
I just want to say I think Rocco would have been proud of that conversation, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, there was no yelling and we didn't start throwing things, so that's good.
We always
Oh,
had
I
these
didn't know we could
debates
do
with Adam.
that.
Well, you can. Just don't hit your webcam or your monitor. Or anybody around you. Excellent. So, Ulfnick, you are like the man with all the tools, it seems like, all the cool tools.
Yeah.
Everything from helping me fix my Google Calendar that I for the show to now to AI. And I want a little background here. I guess probably a lot of us are familiar with artificial intelligence and the things like Chat GPT and some of those others, I guess, that are exciting, and the things you can do with computers with machine learning and such. But what was the inspiration for you to start traveling down this AI route?
That's an interesting question. I think it's just your fascination. I mean, everybody but the cat right now is talking about AI services that you use online. So ChatGPT, 11 Labs, and so on. And I've never been interested in online services much. And it's, it's like, what is AI? Originally, I thought it was only going to be something that I could use on someone else's computer, that had to exist in some massive server room. And it turns out that is actually could not be further from the truth. You can actually self-host it. And as I began to learn more and more about how you can actually self-host, I was just unbelievably fascinated by it. So over the past few weeks, I've just been digging into it as much as I possibly can. And within a short period of time, I've managed to be able to produce images similar to quality compared to DALL-E. I've been able to do text-to-speech, and I've posted examples. I had someone in the Linux Saloon Telegram give me a script, and I was able to feed it to this text-to-speech AI and produce a discussion between two people talking with each other from a script. with human cadence, tone, ums and ahs. It would even insert like a little bit of laughter where it was appropriate, which I hadn't put in. It was just indistinguishable from human speech. And then I could do that self-hosted, like on my own machine with no internet. It just blows my mind. And also in terms of ChatGPT, so you have OpenAI, which seems to absolutely dominate the discussion right now. But open source has been like it is on fire. Like it is going unbelievably fast. And it seems that I can download interfaces and AI models that allow me to have discussions with AI that are, I wouldn't say it would be exactly of the same quality as OpenAI because they are simply an amazing company, but it's close. Like I can have them write scripts for me and the scripts are actually correct. And it's just fascinating that you can do that. So I've been digging into it as much as I possibly can and setting up all sorts of different AIs and producing guides. I do have one right now, which is on the forum, but I do need to add more. So new guides are coming very shortly, but I just keep iterating and improving. And it's hard to pick a point to write a guide because it's like, that guide would have sucked. I really needed to add, X, Y, Z. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of a long answer to that question. What inspired me?
Well, I think Zeb, you bring up some interesting points about AI, and it's just to kind of kick off the conversation here. You said that if you understand AI, and probably don't, although you can actually say this instead of me, it's not taking information. It's just taking information already out there, produced by humans, and building an answer from that. So Ulfnick, is it? I mean, I guess the state of artificial intelligence now, is it just regurgitating what it's learned?
I am about as far as you could possibly get from an expert. Like if you take the inverted negative of expert, that's me. Was that a double negative? I'm not sure. Yeah, so I'll take stable diffusion as a good example. Stable diffusion is for producing art from a text prompt, and they use a single byte of information per image that they use as their training data. And 1 byte is like it's a letter on your keyboard to summarize an entire image. Their training data was mostly 512 by 512 pixels, and they're taking a single byte. It's nothing. But in the culmination of every single image that it's trained on, it's taking 1 byte once condensed from every single image. They're able to teach an AI the process of how to, obviously mathematically related to speech in terms of how that image is described. They're able to create a mathematical model that allows you to guide the AI to an end result that is a picture that is the culmination of all of these mathematical representations of descriptions that are that make sense for the text that you've entered. It's a hard thing to describe.
Alan, what is it they have? Or Shickle?
It's not too dissimilar in regards to generative AI for, like, let's just say like text prompts for like chat AIs, in regards to it's trained on data and then it learns how to create something based on that reference data. It is not necessarily just so I think right now the most common explanation for it is that you teach it a bunch of stuff with data, you give it to it, it learns that, and then it can like respond. But what you're actually doing is you create what's called a language model, which is essentially a structure for how this is going to associate the tasks or the words or whatever it's given, and how it's going to use that model. That model is essentially going to dictate how it references information that it has access to. So there are multiple levels of how it works, and so it doesn't necessarily learn things outright. Like it doesn't just it doesn't just have the internet in its pocket and it's learned the whole internet, but rather it's sort of built associations between the data that it's given and how that data is inferenced in other places and how we reference it. And so when we ask questions, it's essentially using this sort of like language model to reference data in the sort of like in the context of what it's been taught in that training. So it doesn't really necessarily know the things. It knows how what the things are supposed to mean and reference those. It's very it's almost abstract in a way. I'm gonna
Go on,
lower my
interesting.
hand here.
And then Zeb, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I've just finished a job where we were converting from an old bespoke system into a newer system, and we had a data lake that said, if you mention this word in this system and data comes from this system, we don't call it that. We don't call it A, we call it B. So whenever you are referenced A, in this particular new product, you have to call it B instead. So is it in its simplistic form, Alan, what you were talking about, like a data translation table, that it knows that when you mention a word, these are the types of words that you can have associated with it, or that it can then go up and look and find, almost like a giant thesaurus sort of thing?
That is definitely an element of it. Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge level of that where it is it's sort of built to reference things in that very particular way, even if it doesn't necessarily know those things itself.
Well, go ahead, Colin. Everyone's raising hands. It's so wild. So
Yeah.
polite.
I was just wondering, is it repetitive? Because let's just say two people on the opposite side of the world are going for the same position of a job, and then they ask ChatGPT to make me a resume. Would it come out with the same information, or would it be different information?
Usually different information. There are a lot of things where it will generate the same stuff, but anytime, I guess if you ask it the exact same thing and all the exact same variables were there, it could generate the same information, but it's very likely to give you different information based on a bunch of factors, such as like if you didn't do it at the exact same time, and it's referencing like, so some AIs can only reference data that they've been trained on up to a certain date. Others, like the ones that are being built into Google Search and Bing, can sort of use existing models to reference current data. So if you ask it to do something, and let's say between the time that you ask it to do something and the time that the other person asks it to do something, there is new information, it can totally change the result.
Right.
But also you're in a different location, so it will probably also have slightly different results. I don't know if like Australian ChatGPT is a little different than like American ChatGPT, but I imagine there are some like regional differences in how it's trained.
But that has to be
that's
true,
interesting, isn't it?
because if you're from Australia, you're obviously tough as nails, and so you have a different
Probably going to be
worldview.
a few more beer breaks put into it as well.
I like where you're going there, Zeb.
You can usually configure how much noise you want when interpreting the prompt. It also depends on the size of the model. So
Yeah.
if you have a huge model, it can be quite difficult to run, but you get a lot more variation in the various ways it can convert your prompt into a response. There's also processes of quantization and compression to get it to run on smaller hardware. But the problem is, the more you do that, the more samey the prompt is. So I've run LLMs on, I think, a 4 gigabyte, within 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and the responses it's like almost the exact same thing every single time. But I've also had the fortune of being able to run one that was about 40 gigabytes of VRAM, and it was very, very different. But again, that's up to seed randomization. If you have the same seed every time, you will get the same output every single time. But if you set it to random, then you get the variation. And then there's also the difference of what the AI is actually trained on. So if it's trained on very short responses, then it's probably not going to give you a lot of nuance. But if it's been trained on literally books, which a recent model that came out, released by MosaicML, they've trained it on, I think it's 30,000 tokens, which is amazing because that's more than OpenAI can offer, even with their internal models. Then you can get like a huge amount of nuance, because now it's comparing context to an entire book rather than just something that's super short. So yeah, it can be extremely varied, or it can be very samely. It just depends on what model you're using and what your settings are.
I see you have a lot of notes in the show notes, Wolfnick. So if you
Too many.
Yeah, so I don't know how you wanted to go through all that stuff, but if,
I've gone completely off script. Yeah, once you ask the first question, I'm like, okay, let's just go off script.
yeah, I mean, it's a conversation thing that we do here, I guess.
Yes.
I mess up the script, even if I have everything written down exactly what to say. I still mess it
like
up.
to be prepared, and maybe that's to a fault. So
No, I think that's good. I like these notes. Yeah. So you're going to give a demonstration. I don't know if
yes,
you
sir.
can try sharing your screen. It should work. Well, hold on, wait.
If everything goes wrong, it's going to go wrong now. So we'll see.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and try sharing your screen. And if it messes up on my end, don't worry about it. That's what the magic of editing is for.
Okay, so I'm going to be showing a VM. Let me see here. So in theory, you guys will see a desktop.
Yes, and I think everyone on the YouTubes should be seeing it as well. At least according to OBS, it should be out there.
Okay, brilliant. So there's a lot of different AI, but just the one that I'm going to demo here is called stable-diffusion. Let me just get to my notes. So stable-diffusion, you might compare it to something like DALL-E or Midjourney, which you can, which are various services for creating images from prompts. And there's a lot of interfaces to choose from. The one that we're using here, that you're looking at here, is by Automatic 1111, and the project is called Stable-Diffusion Web UI. So it's pretty easy to remember. As far as the options for Stable-Diffusion, this is kind of undisputed king, in my humble opinion, by a long way. It's much more of a mix-up when you get into audio or text, but yeah, for stable-diffusion, it's really got to be Automatic 1111. So after you install it, which you can do through following the guide that is currently right now on the Tux Digital Forum, you should get an interface that looks like this. I'll be using a few extra extensions. I need to add that to the guide, so they're not in it yet, but they will be. So first thing is you pick a model. What I've gone with is Rev Animated. When you install this, you'll probably only have one or two but they're pretty easy to install. So I'm going with Rev Animated for my AI model. So for my prompt, you want to enter in a prompt, and this one I have prepared earlier. So this allows you to convey the context and prominence of the various different things that you want your AI to produce an image from, and you can increase and decrease the prominence of certain words or phrases. So here we have realistic, and just by holding control key and pressing the up arrow, it'll do the syntax for me. But we can say increase or decrease the prominence of certain words. This is the negative prompt. So you can see I have, you know, we don't want it to draw, or we don't want it to have inference toward deformed, you know, iris deformed people's bad eyes, etc. A few of these are using, again, special add-ons that I've added. I'll add that to the instructions on the forum, but they're not in there quite yet. So we'll do a batch size of 4. So we have 4 images to choose from, and we'll click generate. And this is currently in a VM. I have done a VM or a GPU pass-through guide to run AI in a VM. You don't have to, but I find it very nice because it means that if I accidentally break something or I want to roll things back, it just makes life very, very easy. So, you know, follow the guide if you want to put it in a VM, but you know, it's just as easy just to run it as, say, a separate user on your Linux system. So we got the render coming in here. And as soon as it finished, I will show how that can be played with. So here we have 4 pictures of a cyberpunk individual on a laptop. Click on the zoom so we can pick one we like. So this one's kind of nice, so we'll pick this one.
That's actually what Zeb looks like these days.
Really? Okay.
No, I don't know.
Am I doxing people with images here? So just real quick, you might notice 512 by 512. Again, that's what Stable Diffusion is trained on mostly. So that's usually the setting. Obviously, you're going to want that bigger if you want to produce like a really nice picture, but how the workflow usually works with Stable Diffusion, you create a small image and then you upscale it with AI, and AI will add detail as it's upscaling it. By producing small ones, you can render them faster, and you can, you know, iterate more quickly, a size that the model is most comfortable with. You can go up to 1080p if you want, or what have you. So I've installed an extension called ControlNet, and this is very, very new. So this is an exciting recent development, and by recent I mean I think I've found out about it maybe 3 weeks ago. But you can drag your image in, and I'm not going to enable it yet. So what this allows you to do is it lets you compose a picture into a reference that the AI can use when generating new pictures. And the best I can describe it is it's a bit like giving the AI a coloring book and saying, okay, now you fill in between the lines. So you can do that in various ways. So here I'm producing a depth map. It's running slower because I have zoom open. I'm definitely pushing my to the limit here. So here's a depth map, and you can use that as an inference to say, you know, hey, I want a, you need to draw within sort of this area with this kind of depth. But we're going to do openPose. And this, you can run a preprocessor just to have a look at what it's going to give the AI before you actually do renders with it. But this openPose is another one you can use, and essentially it looks at the image and it creates a skeleton of what it sees within the image. You can do just faces, you can do the full body. Here we're doing a full body. And now the AI is sort of locked into this pose. So I'll just show how that relates to rendering. So I'm going to do a quick render without it. We're just going to do a batch size of 1 to make it quicker. So this is just a man sitting in a French cafe in the hundreds. And we see it's nothing like our, it's not similar really, or it's, you know, the guy sitting to the left, he's pointing a different direction from our image. So it's nothing like it. So if we go down to control net, now we enable it. And now we're going to generate again. And here, this skeletal pose now with the face and the eyes and so on is being used to combine with the prompt to tell the AI how to fill in the image, and it should follow this skeleton once it's done. Of course, it takes a bit more resources. So in my practice run, I wrote down to do 4, but with Zoom and everything else going on, I think I can only do 1. So I'm afraid we're gonna have to limit the demo a little bit. But
That's all right.
Yeah.
Time to buy a Threadripper.
Oh man, yeah. The hard to run AI well is expensive. It's coming down, and like I said, the people making them are making better and better compressed versions, so you can get decent detail out of something you can run on limited hardware. But yeah, for a while you're gonna need a beefy machine. So there you go. There's a completely different style, and it is following the skeletal structure from our previous render. So what is so cool about that is if you type in a prompt, you could get anything, right? I mean, you'll get what the AI pulls from your prompts, but it's hard to determine direction, where the hands are, what they're doing, action poses, especially if someone's swinging a sword. You know, it's good luck getting what you want, but if you can produce this skeletal structure, it's a lot easier to get the AI to produce what you had in mind. You also don't need to produce it from an AI image. So what people are doing is they'll go on Google Images and they'll find a fight scene, or they'll find something cool like a cool pose, and then they'll put it into ControlNet, get the skeletal structure, and then they'll generate from that skeleton. So then they get these cool poses, but with the description they've written in their prompt. And that's been a massive development. That's a total game changer. So yeah, I suppose there's a lot to show. OpenPose is an extension you can add. This allows you to do the posing yourself, and then you can import that into you can import that back into ControlNet. So either you save the image. I think there's a way to send it directly. I can't remember which way to do that, but
your skeleton has
you can send in your own skeleton.
It has no torso. It's all legs.
I don't know why. Let me look at the one that. Yeah, see, it's the same. I mean, this is the image that ControlNet speaks, I suppose, or at least it wouldn't benefit from the extra line for the torso.
I think that it sets like proportional width values. So if you like moved like what would be the top 2 torso bits like very far wide, it would sort of change the sort of so like that's essentially like a much wider torso. I think that's what it does. Rather than having a bunch of completely separate control lines along a torso. It's like, hey, this is basically the middle, and this is the sort of bounds that it needs to fit within.
So if you want a very rotund gentleman, this is that's the skeletal structure you want.
Got it.
Yeah, there's also sites you can take a mannequin, rotate it in 3D, put it in all sorts of different poses, and then you can bring it in. AI legendarily has had an issue with hands. However, there's also a depth library where you can add these hands to your image. So you import it into here, and then you can put the hand where you want it. And then you can do an infill, which will redraw the hand and follow this depth map as its sort of its fill in the its coloring book where it has to fill inside the lines. So I suppose the last thing that I'll show is infill. Now Photoshop recently got infill. I saw a demo and it was on Gary Explains. I actually have the images he used. I won't try to do it because I'm probably going to push it a bit too much processor wise. But everything that he showed in that video of Photoshop doing, you can do in automatic 1111. And you know, the open source AI world has had it for quite some time. Photoshop is just trying to catch up. I don't think they have anything like ControlNet yet. But yeah, if we send this to InPaint, and let's say we just want to change his hat, so we got a bigger brush, and you can be pretty messy with this because it blurs the prominence as it gets away from the center of the black. Okay, so this is where I definitely need my notes. Mass content fill. Also, anybody who uses automatic 1111 is probably yelling at their screen right now and telling me I'm doing this horribly wrong, but there's much better ways to do this. This is just as a reference. We'll try for a 3 on batch size. We got sampling method, and there's a lot of tweaking here. Denoising strength, this we kind of talked about this earlier, but denoising is how random you want it to be versus how much it wants you want it to take the rest of the image or what's under the black dot, depending on the settings, as a reference for what you'd want the outcome to be. Anyway, so we're gonna attempt an endpoint, an infill, and if this is horrible, I'm sorry, but okay, cool, it did work. Yeah, this is the part of the instruction where I'm like, this may go horribly wrong.
You know, in a way, like what you're doing
so
is kind of like an art.
yeah,
You're using specific
it's,
brushes to do different things.
I'll just clear this so you can see the original. Oh, I guess this I need more training on this because this is complicated, but you can it'll replace it based on your prompt, based on what you've decided to infill. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I just think it's a neat tool. I mean, it's kind of like a Photoshop with a lot of assistance, I guess, but you're the one that's actually driving the drawing, as it were. You're instructing the computer to create these things. It's not just creating on its own, but it's creating it based on whatever it is that you're giving. I just think it's very fascinating. It could be a lot of fun. This makes me think of like the holodeck on Star Trek. You know, that you can do these things.
Well, I wasn't actually going to talk about this, but just now you mentioned it. There's something incredible called Drag Your GAN, and it's not. They haven't released it yet. However, this is like news as of yesterday, as is always with world. It seems to be. It moves in weeks. It's like it's fast, but there's something called Drag Your GAN, and it's a project it's been around for a little bit, and basically you can take an image and you can pick 2 points, and you can drag. You can tell the AI to move a particular point to another point. So if, say, you have a horse or cat, or maybe it's a lion, you can pick a point on its nose. I want its nose to go over there. And then in frames, it will move the head of the lion. And as it's moving it, it will figure out what the image needs to look like if the lion was moving it. And the most amazing thing is, if you have a picture, say, of a cat and half of its head is off the picture, you can use drag your GAN to move the like turn the cat's head, or move the cat's head in a way that the cat actually comes into full view, because the AI is building the rest cat from the part that it had. And that's I forget the term. Something you can also use outfill. The image should be, if it was made to be larger. But yeah, that's fascinating. But the cool part is that someone built an open source project very recently that replicates what the Drag Your GAN project was able to do. And I haven't had a chance to install and use it yet, but it is open source, and anybody should be able to get it to run. So that's something we're all getting now too.
So these different things you talk about, you haven't tried yet. Is it still using this framework here, the stable-diffusion framework, and you just plug that into it?
Depends on. I'm not sure what the replica of Drag Your GAN is using. Here we're off into the area I don't know as much about, but I think Drag Your GAN is using a different type of AI model than stable-diffusion. It's like an older version maybe, and I'm not sure what the new project is using. They might be using stable-diffusion, but when I say you're sort of moving a cat's head or hitting a car on an axis, it kind of needs to know what the car looks like in order to do that. So you can't just pick something novel and move it. It's using what is in the image as its prompt, as it attempts to move certain parts and make sense of what that new orientation look like in the rest of the image. Yeah, sorry I couldn't give you a complete answer on that one.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, this is amazing, and I think this would be a lot of fun to play with for sure. And so thank you for the demonstration, is what I'm trying to say here. So is this machine here that you're doing this on, does this have the NVIDIA card as well, or is this all CPU?
It's well, I forget what am I passing through here? I can actually tell real quick. I can look at the PCI pass through. So I'm running a GeForce RTX 3060. I recently got it, so I didn't know the model number offhand, but I sold my AMD so I could get an NVIDIA. The reason why NVIDIA hardware is designed incredibly well for AI, and they've put a lot of attention for years into building AI hardware solutions. So they have Tensor cores, which AMD doesn't have, but also they have the software that they've built out for compiling your AI software again, is designed to use their hardware. So I mean, like full stack, they've created a product and software to go with that product, or to go with that hardware, that it's like a complete package, and AMD doesn't have that, as far as I'm aware. So what's happened is with this sort of AI revolution that's occurring, if you don't have an NVIDIA, I mean, you're screwed basically. There are advancements are being made to allow you use CPUs and be able to use AMD GPUs. They're not even remotely as effective at running AI, but they are. I mean, it's coming along quite well. So I don't know how this is going to pan out. I mean, I could be, I mean, they might get somewhere close to parity, like maybe a year or two from now, but I highly doubt it. I mean, anything's possible, right?
Right.
But yeah, NVIDIA is just like miles ahead. So if you're doing an AI stuff and it's on GPU AI stuff, which generally speaking, the better, well, that's the better environment you really want at the moment. Yeah, it really needs to be an NVIDIA card. In terms of RAM, the problem with these AI software guys, I mean, it's you can tell that they do all their stuff in a data center, they do it all on the cloud, or they have these incredible machines, and when they're baking things, so people can use them on smaller GPUs, it's like there's not a lot of attention to detail. So like for example, it's assumed that you have an amazing internet connection, because they will, like, if you fail a download of say a 5 or 10 gigabyte file, like it blips out for a second, then it's going to start it from scratch. And they haven't used the flags in Python to have it continue downloads. And for like a consumer market, that's, everyone would want that, because 10 gig like all at once is not necessarily easy unless you're in a data center. Likewise with RAM, with CPU RAM, a lot of them, let's say you're loading a model and the model doesn't necessarily need 8 gigabytes, but it will put the model into RAM first, and then it'll put it onto the GPU, which forces you to have as much RAM as you have VRAM in order to do that transition, which can be pretty rough if you're working with huge models. But this varies between software. So it depends what software you're using to interface with the AI, because some are very good about respecting resources. Some are a bit sloppy, and those are more orientated toward the data centers where you got tons of RAM and you don't care. So it varies like wildly, but with stable diffusion, it seems to be very polite, especially with the work Atomic 11 has done, where you can, I mean, it might be possible to run it on a 2 gigabyte card in limited instances, but you could almost get away with a 4 gigabyte VRAM card if you're very careful, but 8 gigabytes you're good to go, and 12 you're perfect. So yeah, and as for the CPU, just 4-core basic GPU, you don't need anything fast.
So you demonstrated an artistic usage of AI, but for things like helping you to code, because I think you talked about that as well, like if you're writing a program, whatever, is that something that you can also run locally, that it would have that ability?
Yeah. Well, this dovetails into something very exciting, but I'm going to give you a non-exciting answer to start off with. It's, if we're talking about a competitor to Copilot, the answer is no. Copilot absolutely dominates. I haven't seen anything that even comes remotely close to that type of innovation and the quality. GitHub or Microsoft has done incredibly well with Copilot. That said, I haven't used Copilot that much. I'm just going off what I've seen in YouTube videos. But the cool part that this dovetails into is it's more than just it's can you integrate it into your workflow if you say it's not images, right? Can you integrate it into your workflow? And what's really interesting to me is where the pragmatic side, like where's the rubber meet the road, right? If you're a company, or you're a programmer, or you're trying to figure something out, how are you actually going to use it? And one of the things that's very popular right now is doing PDF reading. So I have a client that I need to learn how to program BASIC for, the basic language, which is like the absolute. And I I was given a PDF file and it's a mile long, and to be honest, I'm not sure how that's going to go yet, but um, basically you can give the AI this PDF file and it will read the entire thing, and you can chat to it um, regarding the PDF file. And with BASIC, that's important because limited amount of information out there, especially for this very specific type of BASIC. But if say you're a company, whatever, and you have these like weird obscure manuals for different systems, you can throw them into the prompt, then talk to the AI about what it would do in a particular situation of answers from that PDF. And the alternative is you have to give them to OpenAI or some other cloud service, which you may not want to, or you may not legally be allowed to. And being able to run it locally also means that you might be able to run it at way faster. There's also the other problem with the prompt size, because if you have a very large document, you're not going to be able to give it to OpenAI or any cloud service. You have to run it locally because you're going to need MosaicML MPT7B, possibly the story writer version, in order to be able to give it a large enough prompt to contain a PDF document. So yeah, going way off script there, but yeah, in terms of programming specifically, yes, you can get it to output snips of code or like a small script. But at that point, you really need some serious hardware. You probably need 3 or 4 decent modern gaming GPUs to do that. One card with a lot of VRAM. That will get better over time. It will probably get to the point you could do it on one card. It's not quite there yet. So you can do that. But in terms of like beyond code, so if you're like talking about coding manuals or very technical tasks, which perhaps you're coding for, like APIs and long descriptions, like the Matrix API, for example, you can into a prompt if you have an appropriate model to do that and be able to talk to it. So anyway, yeah, way off script. I'm rambling. So there you go. There's a full brain download on that topic.
So another question is, so could you have this local AI maybe help you, like let's say you have a writer's block and you want to explain something, giving it some prompts and have it maybe build something off of that?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you can have the AI write the whole book. But yeah, it's very good at that. Right now, if we're talking the more modern stuff, it's almost comparable to OpenAI. So OpenAI, you can pretty much ask anything. Oh, okay, I have a much better answer to this question. Yeah, so there's something that recently came out, which is very recently, which is I mentioned it before. It's Mosaic. They came out with something called MPT7B Story Writer 65K, and it's literally designed for writing stories. So what makes it special is it's fine-tuned on long-form documents with 65,000 token contexts. And I'm going to butcher this. I'm not going to take heat in the comments, but I think a token is roughly the size of a word. I think I'm not sure if it's quite that. And they've done examples where they've taken it up to 80,000 tokens, and sadly, you're going to need quite some hardware. You're going to need like an A180 gigabyte GPU that's quite expensive. You're into the thousands of dollars for that. That will improve over time. But what's cool is you're writing a book. You can put your entire book into the prompt. You can't do that with OpenAI. You can't, well, maybe short book. Even with their private version, which they haven't released yet, which I think is 35. Yeah, I'm not quite sure on that. It's a lot less, but you can put your entire book that you're writing into the prompt, which you don't want to give it to anyone else because this is your frickin' book that you're writing, right? You don't want to, yeah, you don't want to give it to another company. And you can literally talk to the AI, which now has the full knowledge of your book, and say, hey, you know, what does Sam do next in this scene, or what do you think would be a better way to do this, or point out 4 things that you think could be better, or where do you think this story should end, and it will give you an answer. And probably a pretty good one, because Mosaic has done an absolutely amazing job. So I can't thank Mosaic enough for open sourcing this.
And that's something you can use in that client that you just demonstrated.
A trend that I'm seeing is these companies are coming in, like Falcon is Falcon is a recent one, but these companies are building these AI models and then they open source them. And you'd say, why would they do that? And the reason why is because, first of all, you get the full weight of the entire open source community and now come help you with this model that your company has built. But also another thing that seems to be catching on in popularity is these models that are coming out are free to use, as long as I think with Falcon, you're free to use as a company doesn't make more than $1 million, or doesn't make more than $1 million with the model. I'm not sure which one it is. I'm not sure what Mosaic's one is, but they're both compatible with being able to use it for business, which is nice. And I think they have like some clause in there, so you have to enter into a financial relationship with them at some point. But yeah, it's a far cry from what has been sort of dominating the AI world before then, the Llama versions. And the problem with Llama is you have sorry, second.
Oh, it's all good. I know you're. I had a question about all this actually. So you're talking about like the hardware requirements being NVIDIA and such. I'm one of those dirty red folks right now. What is the
Yeah, I was there.
what is the option? What are so some of these like tools, like the open source stuff, are there groups or companies that are offering sort of, I guess, hosting or services? You know what I mean? Like where I can use these tools on someone else's hardware without having to necessarily build my own PC and all that?
Yeah, you can host or you can rent the raw equipment, but yeah, there's some. Yeah, let me formulate a better answer. Oh, if you want a really nice time with it, the service called rundiffusion.com, which you use right now. I have an account. I have used it. It's pretty good. And what I demoed, you can have right in front of you for it's usually less $1 an hour. And then you can play with it, and it comes with all the models. I can't remember how many extensions it comes with. I'm not sure, but you can install extensions from the UI. So you boot it up, and then you could install extensions from the UI, and then you'd be able to use them. So I don't know of a competitor to Rundiffusion, but they have a really good service. In terms of the others,
So what was the service again?
Rundiffusion. I will give the link. Yeah, the link will be in the show notes. So I'll make sure you guys have access to it. Everything that I've mentioned, I'll try my best to make sure that it's in the show notes with links.
So what I think is interesting is the price to use this AI technology from that service is about the cost of dial-up in the 90s. I just wanted to bring that up, but it's about the same cost.
Wow. Oh, there you go. You can also use it on Google Colab. I have never used Google Colab. I don't know how it works, but most of these projects allow you to use a Google Colab, which for whatever reason that is beyond my comprehension is basically free. And you have a reasonably decent GPU allows you to use, and then you can play with the AI. And generally, you're given a nice prompt or a nice interface to use. To find those Google Colabs, usually you're looking at the GitHub page because it will show a link, or you're on Hugging Face, which is the main repository that most people have chosen for their AI learning projects. And in the AI card, they'll usually mention a Google Colab. There's also something called Hugging Face Spaces, which allows you to, again, run these projects where they're already set up. You just have to press run, and then you can test them live without having any or almost any technical ability. And you can use them for free. And a pattern I keep seeing is, I listen to a lot of AI YouTubers now, and some of them they don't have the hardware for it because it's expensive. It's depending on what you're doing. Like I mean, if let me see here. If you're trying to run like Vicuna 13B or something, you need like 3 video cards. You're just not going to be doing that. But what I've seen repeating is there's a certain amount of YouTubers that just don't have the hardware, and they're able to use Hugging Face Spaces to actually run these models on virtual hardware in the cloud, which is free, which is amazing because it's expensive, right? I mean, that costs money, and yet somehow the wonderful people at Hugging Face and the wonderful people who've created these projects have collaborated to set this up that people can use it for free, which freaking amazes me. I mean, thank you to those people. But I'll need to give a bit of a better description somewhere for people to actually, use that actionably. Like, where is the link exactly, Olfnick? Where do I go exactly? Give me a URL. So I'll provide some URLs tonight for the show notes. And I'll paste some to the forum. So there's no thinking involved. You'll just be able to click the link and you'll be looking at an interface. It's early days though. Yeah.
And it's something. So I do have some hardware that I got to dig out. And I could throw an NVIDIA card in there with no problems. So this is something I could put like on my home network and run it remotely because you're using a web interface. So I could remotely log into that machine. I could call it HAL, probably. At least I make that the name, the DNS finder.
It definitely should be called HAL, especially if you hook it into a bunch of other things, your IoT devices.
Well, I was thinking probably either that or I'd call it Majel Barrett, the voice of the computer on Star Trek: The Next Generation. That would be also cool. But it's probably not going to talk to me. Although, so does this also do like the different voice models as well? So if you feed it some voices, that it can talk to you.
I haven't. Yeah, I think I brought this up earlier, but I haven't gone as much into that. But you should be able to do text to speech and speech to text, so it can listen to what you're saying. And I mean, OpenAI is just being freaking amazing on this front. But as far as what can be self-hosted, it's pretty decent from what I can tell. I've done the text to speech. I'm quite impressed with it. I have a long way to go because it's like at this point, how I do it is I'm like in a Python CLI and I'm like entering strings for it to run. It's not exactly a friendly interface. But yeah, as this evolves, you get more and more friendly interfaces. 11 Labs, if you just want to use something that it's going to work, you want to go to 11labs.com. I think they're the leader. You can pick a voice, put in a prompt, and it will give you audio. I don't think you need an account or anything. You're off to the races. In terms of posting that, I think there's going to need to be more time before the interfaces are ready. Again, it's the AI developers, man. I mean, like all obsessed with making just incredible software, not so much interfaces really being left behind. So it's going to take some time, but yeah, it'll be you'll be able to do text to speech, speech to text with very high quality. It's going to have ums, ahs, normal human cadence, everything. It's going to be like speaking to a human in a sense, shortly. Not quite there yet, but soon.
I basically just want my house to talk to me in Majel Barrett's voice. That's really all I want.
That can be done.
Yeah,
It
that's.
can be done.
I like her voice. It takes me to a happy place from my childhood, and so I think it would just be enjoyable just to have that. That's really all I want. If AI could just provide that for me, I'd be a happy spud.
Yeah, from a simplistic point of view, I suppose you'd have something permanent listening for, say, for you to say the word computer, and then that would trigger the AI, and then it would pull in whatever data that you've given it relevant to the situation. So maybe it's whether or not your garage door is open, and you'd say, hey, AI, is my garage door open? And then it gets the stats, and then it does the output, and then it does the output to speech and plays it. Yeah, I guess you could do that. And that could all happen pretty quick if the models are preloaded.
And then if it goes evil, it can start talking like Hal. I'm sorry, Nate. I cannot do that.
You could tell it to go evil at random times. Like have like an adventure mode where, okay, kids, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna have an evil AI day. I'm just gonna tell it to like just wreak havoc.
Yeah.
I'm
Hal,
gonna see how it goes.
open the garage door. I'm sorry, Nate. I cannot do that. Hal, I need to get to work.
Oh, you could put in oh yeah, I forget the name of the movie. It's Odyssey, Space Odyssey something. But if you got the script for the movie, you could put that into the AI. You could tell it to play Hal, like no problem, and it would play Hal. And then you could try to negotiate with it so you could get to work in the morning.
Hal, turn on the kitchen lights. Because everything in my house is controllable by Home Assistant. So if you could then connect the artificial intelligence to Home Assistant, like have access to it, which would be easy. You could just actually give it a login and anything else to it. It could probably use the web interface, I imagine, or whatever. Oh, that could be frightening. So do you have to turn off this AI system that you have every night just so it doesn't do things on its own?
Well, I keep it in a VM, so I don't particularly care, and I have a snapshot which I can roll back to if there's a problem. But it's man, that is an interesting topic. It is it's very self-contained, and it's not really something that's going to give you issues. Where it gets a little thing is, again, we're talking about people who are obsessed with just building the best AI possible, and they don't really think about security. So things like cross-site scripting attacks. There was one that was in a recent project where AI wrote HTML. It could break out of the element or break out of its context and just start arbitrarily rendering HTML, which includes but is not limited to JavaScript. And if you can arbitrarily run JavaScript, you can start poking at APIs, assuming you know about, and AI might know about various, or probably does know about various API endpoints that can start poking around in and doing things with that you don't know about because it's invisible to you. So if the AI, if your model was trained to attempt to use these cross-site scripting attacks, it could do so. I don't know to what, because you're running it in a browser, but it's also loaded into memory and RAM, and then I don't know to what degree it can get out, but generally speaking, it needs to be developed to be malicious. And I think that's probably in the future. I haven't heard anything about this yet, but in the future, there'll probably be people producing malicious models that once you run them are going to try it out and do something. But it couldn't be further from a concern now. Maybe give it a few years when AI is getting a bit too intelligent, and that would be a concern.
So,
but yeah, it's in a Yeah, go on.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
It wasn't a very good thought. I was glad that you cut me off.
Oh, well,
I
Zeb
was just
has.
going to repeat, run it in a VM if you can, but if not, yeah, it's not really a big deal at the moment
Got it.
to just run it as a user, say.
So Zeb has a question.
It's more of a warning, Nate, that when you get your HAL up and running and connect it to your house information, if any of your children are actors, don't say to them, good luck, break a leg, as they're going to school to do, because it might suddenly chuck the garden rake in front of them and they physically break their leg as they're on the way. So that's the sort of silly, stupid thing that I'm worried about when things go wrong, because you just said something basically quite normal. Yeah, good luck, son, break a leg. And it thinks you've asked it to help facilitate your son getting his leg broken. Scary stuff.
I think that's one of the things that I didn't expect, was because, like, when I was younger, say, or when I was younger, like maybe even just a year ago, when I think of AI, okay, it's going to be very pedantic, and you got to be very careful of what you tell it to do, because it's kind of like a genie, right? It's it could go any way with what you're saying. But with LLMs specifically, they're trained on context and language, so they understand context as a human would understand context, in a sense, I guess, in a mathematical sense. So if you're asking it something, even if you're using sort of a weird phrasing for it, it knows about that phrasing, assuming it's a regular thing to say, and it will kind of know what you meant, as a human would kind of know what you meant. And that's sort of not
That's the
something
frightening
I
level.
expect. So if you say, go break a leg, I mean, it would know that is a term that's used in a positive context,
Let's hope
but can
so.
also be used in a negative context. So it seems to be able to know what it's supposed to do usually.
So in the show notes, there's a question there. I don't know if someone put it in there or what, but I thought it was interesting. It says, currently GPU cores best perform the necessary tasks for these locally run AI programs. But as we see in almost every smartphone now, hardware dedicated AI processing is a long-term necessity. Any thoughts on how Linux might address hardware ML cores in the future as they come to x86 chips? And ML meaning machine learning, I'm assuming.
I think that's a bit above my head, but when it comes to phones, what's probably going to happen is you're going to have them introduce AI cores specifically for AI. But even right now, there are models that you can run on a phone's processor within a phone's CPU RAM with no GPU. They're heavily quantized, so they're not particularly very accurate. But as time goes on, those will improve. So it doesn't feel like a problem that is going to need a difficult solution over time. So maybe a year from now, it's really going to be quite commonplace and easy. Yeah, so I don't know beyond that.
Like this is a pivotal moment, I think, in technology history, like we're experiencing right now. I think even more so than the smartphone, maybe even more so than broadband. I think this is something that's going to change a lot, and I hope that it's something that changes. That's a change for the good, for sure, because there is some concern about using a capability like this for something nefarious. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to bring up or ask? Because we are running out of time. All right, Mark put a funny thing in the chat here. Hey Alexa, set Nate's office to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That's funny. I would actually be okay with that, but I think my computer would probably be unhappy about that. Man, I don't have Alexa in here.
She already did it, right?
Well, the air conditioning isn't working because I don't know why, but something happened. We had a power outage and it never came back. So
It was Alexa.
Blame Alexa. So there's a quote from a Dr. Ian Malcolm. Does anybody know this quote? Where I'm going with this? So he's saying to the professor, I forget his name, the old white-haired feller.
Jonathan Hammond.
Jonathan Hammond, that's right, Mr. Hammond. This, in reference to creating these dinosaurs from, as he did, says, yeah, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And it's probably one of the greatest quotes of all time, because I think there's a lot to that. To think about that, we do things, but we don't stop to think whether or not we should. And I don't think that AI is something that we shouldn't do. I just sometimes am worried about whether or not where we should implement it, I guess, is the thing. And I mean, it was inevitable. We've been working on it. AI has been a thing since the 60s. It's just been, I think it's more rapid. I think 60s it was. Is that what Sean Gold said? Somebody said in the chat, since the 60s they've been working on it. 90s, I remember games really touting the whole, your opponents that will learn and attack you better, I guess. When I say better, attack you with more skill, intelligence.
But Nate, isn't that why some of the top CEOs of these AI development companies are now saying, hold up, let's just stop development. It's moving too fast. We need to look at what's happening before we develop it further. Or have I misread that somewhere?
No, it's been more than one person that said such things, that maybe we need to, pump the brakes on this. But I think you've already opened up Pandora's box. So where we go from here, I guess I don't know. I mean, regardless, I don't think Skynet's going to be a thing. Well, maybe it will. I don't know. What do I know? Skynet could be a thing, and we got to all get destroyed by robots. But I think that we might be giving it a little bit more, I don't know, we're giving it too much credit, more credit than it deserves as far as its destructive capability. I mean, it might end the internet, but I don't necessarily think it's going to end everything that, we do in our lives. I think there might be, something bad could happen, but I mean, we survived the Cold War, I mean, I don't know. I don't look at it as a negative necessarily. I look at it as a tool, like the calculator, like something to assist me. I just hope it doesn't cause people to be more isolated from other people. That's my concern. Because I think one of the things that technology has done, although it has brought people together to socialize, like, I never would have met any of you fine folk had technology not been a thing. But for some people, I'm concerned about how technology can actually isolate people. Like, it does the opposite. And I just hope that this doesn't cause further isolation. Sean. He says,
choose your pill wisely.
I think in ways it's kind of like a race to the atom bomb.
Yeah.
But also the whole nuclear era. I mean, nuclear power plants, right?
Right.
They're pretty important.
Yeah, and they are the cleanest form of energy. So I mean,
I think we're racing towards unbelievable amount of power. That is, that gratefully seems to be a bit more distributed than I thought it would be.
Yeah, for sure. That's, I think, what I think is very neat. But what Sean says is, it is your choice to use AI or not. It's your choice to use AI or not to use AI. Choose your pill wisely.
I've sort of given myself the perspective of seeing it as like with all these like AI tools and AI in different places, it's kind of like just choosing a language to do something with. Like, let's say you go to like write an email or write a text or whatever. There are so many utilities you can do or you could use to do that, and they all have different features and functions that might make that particular task easier. And a lot of these AI tasks are sort of just like giving you the ability to do any of those things and just handling it, regardless of like what platform you're like. So we have like autofill in Gmail already. I think that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago, where if I start typing something out, it will be like, hey, I can finish your sentence. Boom, here it is. Google Messages, which I use, if you're enrolled in Google Messages beta, as well as Carrier Services beta on your Android, it will actually have AI generated responses and messaging as well. So like when I'm texting people, I can have the AI just fill in the blanks for me and just respond for me, which is really cool.
Yep.
So
I agree. So Don in the chat says, which I think is really good, if responsible people don't do it or use AI, irresponsible people will.
Yeah.
And
That's a really good point.
and Don also says research in AI also involve tools on how to recognize AI generated and modified media. We can't stop from becoming weapons, so we need to know how to defend against it. I think that's also true. So yeah, it's those are all good points, and I think that which is why I'm glad, Ulfnick, that you brought it here to everybody, so that we can. I think it opens it up to all of us, so it's not just the few that have the capabilities, but we can all use those capabilities, and hopefully we use it wisely and responsibly. So I think that's make sure you AI responsibly there instead of just Linux responsibly.
And I think something that might take some of the trepidation out of people's minds is if you actually think about it, it's not actually AI. A lot of these tools that we're talking about are not AI at all. They are basically, it is all machine learning models. They are not thinking. They are not creating their own motives and following through with those motives to do a thing. They are simply given a task and just have a much more comprehensive ability to use context to apply to whatever task they're given. It's not even like they're not like sentient tools.
Right.
They're just really, really good at applying vast amounts of context and manipulating that into something else. So if that, maybe that helps alleviate some of the confusion or fear around it, because this is barely anything realistically if we're talking about AI stuff.
Yeah, I think that the trick is is it going to be used like the voice, the 11 Labs voice thing that can be used to fool people into thinking it's somebody else, but we've been doing that for quite a long time. People have been doing impersonations now. Now it's the computer doing impersonations.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's not, yeah. Well, we are at time. And so next week, I'm going to be at Self. So I'm not going to say it's necessarily an open mic night or news flight night. It'll be a Self night. I don't know what that means. It'll be the open mic night format, just not just probably based around Self. We'll be talking about Linux.
Let's tell people what Self is.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Southeast Linux Fest, and I'll be there too with Nate. It's a Linux conference, 3 days in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You're here.
So this will be fun. I will be there. Actually, I won't be there as early as I wanted for reasons, but I will be there, no matter what, no matter the cost. So Southeast Linux Fest, I think getting together with people is a glorious thing, whether it's here on Linux Saloon or elsewhere. I think I love the ability to network with people and actually seeing face to face. Like when I saw Mark last year face to face for the first time, I was excited. It was fun to actually be able to interact with somebody. Then they can see how you really are, and then say, yeah, he's a dork. But anyway, that's what we're going next week. I'll be seeing you from Charlotte, North Carolina. So exciting stuff. If you have any suggestions for Linux Saloon, whatever it might be, if it's some other topics or distribution, you talk about the Linux distributions. Like I really want to dig in MX Linux. I got a taste for it now. Just hearing the wonderful things about it. Any applications that we should check out, or poll ideas. If you have like an idea for a straw poll, single click, double click, there's some others that are really good out there that I think that we can always revisit. But if you have a great idea, please send it to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can send it in the Matrix or Telegram, or send it to Eris or myself, like tag me, or send me, or you can DM me or whatever. It's all good. So it is that time. So it's time for last call. Mark, you are part of a fantastic group of folk called the Atlanta Linux Enthusiasts, and you meet every Sunday at
We meet every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern for 3 hours. And there's no set agenda. You're welcome to join and just ask questions or get some help or listen in. We try to stick on topic of Linux. Recently, we've helped some people with printers and even scanners and using those in Linux. So those were kind of interesting discussions. And yeah, so every Sunday it's an online meeting. Again, you're welcome to join us. Check out more information at ale.org. And thank you, Nate.
Certainly.
Also, last week at the Ale Linux group, I was challenged to do a quick AI demo. So tomorrow I'll be doing that. And if you have questions about AI, you could ask me there if you'd like to. If you have problems setting it up, obviously Linux questions come first, but I'll be there to help any way I can. So yeah, it's a great group. Highly recommend it.
Well,
Are
it
we
is
gonna
running on
install-
Linux.
Are we going to install the software from scratch?
Hey, if you want to, I'm game. I have instructions. You guys can follow. I can paste it in the chat, and yeah, we can do it together.
That's
cool.
awesome.
That'd be great.
All right, Linux user space. They are on break, obviously, but they have a fantastic back catalog. Check it out. But keep an eye out for upcoming live streams and other releases. They've got some more videos coming out over the next couple of weeks. So although they're kind of on their off season, they're still doing things. They haven't totally disconnected. They're still out there. So check out linuxuserspace.show for a great podcast and other stuff. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. I have two co-hosts, Matt and Wendy. We talked about Linux users not liking change. And I was thinking about it after the fact, and there's a lot of things that we missed. Like systemd and sysv init. We didn't even talk about that. There are other things. So many things. I have a website called cubicalate.com. I do things sometimes. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. Shows like Destination Linux, Sudo Show, Hardware Addicts. They're all great. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting as well as YouTube stream. Also, for all of you for watching the show after the fact, thank you so much because that makes the time I spend editing worthwhile. I want to thank everyone involved for making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to AI responsibly, and Linux too. Until next time, see yas.
Bye.
Take care.
So on the docket, I'm sorry, hold on. So your audio is a bit off, almost like it's a bit of clipping, according to Sean Gould. Well, that's fantastic. Hopefully the recording is going well. I will do. I don't know what to tell you. Everything recorded fine, so there we go. Well, I do know
what,
that.
Jinda, that. Sorry, I was just about to
I made a note
say
today.
double click.
Someone else says
And for
I've
those-
always.
So no, go on, Nate, carry on. I didn't know you
This-
got finished. Go on.
I have always been. Alrighty.
Hey, thank you, Nate. I really appreciate that.
Oh, that was
Being able
great.
to-
Yeah,
yeah,
that was great.
being able to
Nate.
talk through all the AI stuff, that was really fun. I absolutely love that. So yeah, thank you for that opportunity.
But I
That was
thought it
awesome. I
used
feel
the,
bad I didn't have more questions.
I've
Well,
used
I
the
mean, I'm
online
on the
version
Telegram.
of some of those tools, but I didn't know you could do the body, framing and stuff. That's really awesome.
That just came out. Yeah, like literally I think it was released, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but maybe 3 weeks ago. And then it takes me a few weeks to find out about it from the YouTubers I watch. And